The night was heavy with silence, the kind of stillness that made even the stars lean closer to listen. Sheikh Hamdan, Fazza, stood before the endless dunes, his heart burning with words he could no longer keep hidden. His eyes carried a storm, but his voice carried peace. "My queen," he began, "I have no fear of anyone to confess this." His voice trembled not from weakness, but from the weight of truth. He had carried this love inside him for too long, hidden behind duty, titles, and expectations. But tonight, he was not a prince, he was a man, stripped of pride, speaking from the depths of his soul. He had loved her in silence, cherished her in the corners of his heart where the world couldn't see. Every poem he wrote, every sigh that escaped him under the desert sky, it was all her. But now, the silence had become too heavy to bear. He was ready to face the whispers, the judgment, the world itself. "Let them talk," he said to the wind. "Let them question my choices. I have never feared truth, and my truth is you." His words carried across the dunes like a promise written in eternity. She was not a woman of the court, not bound by the chains of royal tradition. She was real, raw, imperfect in the most beautiful way. The world might have called her ordinary, but to Fazza, she was divine. He didn't fall for her beauty, he fell for her heart, for the kindness that flowed from her like poetry. She taught him that love is not about power, but about peace. "You are my calm," he whispered once to her. "My anchor in a sea of voices." And tonight, he would tell that truth to the world. As he walked through the corridors of his heart, memories flooded him, the first time her eyes met his, the way her laughter lit up his silence, the way she believed in him when he doubted himself. He had been surrounded by admirers all his life, but none had ever seen the man behind the name, the soul behind the smile. She did. And that was enough reason to defy everything. "My queen," he said again, "if love is a rebellion, then let my heart lead the revolt." There were those who warned him, "Hamdan, you are a prince. You must think of your image." But he smiled at their words. "A heart that fears love is a throne built on emptiness," he replied. "What is a life without love? What is a title if it cannot protect the truth within it?" He was born to lead, not to hide. And so he stood tall beneath the desert sky, his confession glowing brighter than the moon itself. He imagined her reaction, her eyes widening in disbelief, her hands trembling as she heard his words echo across the world. She had always told him to be careful, to keep their love sacred and unseen. But he was done with secrecy. "You are not my secret," he declared. "You are my soul. And I will not be silent about the woman who gave me peace." It was no longer a love hidden in shadows, it was a fire meant to be seen. The people would talk. They always did. Some would understand, others would mock. But Fazza's heart was not built to please, it was built to feel. And what he felt for her was beyond the reach of fear. He was not afraid of the world because love had already made him fearless. When he looked into her eyes, he saw something purer than reputation, deeper than pride, he saw truth. And truth, he knew, was worth every risk. He remembered the nights she told him, "They will never accept it." And he would smile softly, replying, "Then let them learn acceptance from us." To him, love was not meant to be hidden, it was meant to heal. And if his confession could bring light to even one soul who feared to love freely, then it was worth it. He wasn't confessing just for her, he was confessing for every heart that had ever been silenced by fear. As dawn began to break, he stood before the horizon and felt the desert wind wrap around him like a blessing. He thought of her, his queen not by crown, but by heart. "You made me braver," he whispered. "You taught me that love is not weakness, it is strength disguised as softness." His love for her had become his greatest truth, and no force on earth could make him hide it anymore. He began to write, words flowing from his soul like gold across parchment. Each line was a confession, each verse a vow. He wrote of her eyes that saw through him, of her voice that healed him, of her silence that spoke louder than 1,000 songs. He wrote as if the world wasn't watching, as if his heart had found its freedom through ink. And when he finished, he smiled through the tears. "Let them read it," he said.
She sat by her window that morning, unaware of the waves her name had created in the world outside. The headlines, the whispers, the shock, it was all unfolding like a storm. But amid the chaos, she felt something she hadn't felt in years, peace. Because this time, he hadn't hidden her. Sheikh Hamdan, her Fazza, had spoken her truth aloud, with pride in his eyes and conviction in his tone. She clutched the letter he had written for her, her tears falling softly on the ink that carried his heart. Every word screamed courage, and every sentence reminded her that she was loved not in silence, but in strength. As she reread his confession, her heart trembled with both love and fear. She knew the world could be cruel, that not everyone would understand their bond. But his words echoed in her soul like music. "My queen, I have no fear of anyone to confess this." That line became her armor. She realized that his bravery was her shelter, his voice her protection. Love had turned him into something greater than royalty. It had made him human, pure, raw, and magnificent in his vulnerability. When she finally saw him, their eyes spoke before their words did. The distance between them disappeared with one glance. He smiled softly and said, "Now the world knows, and I feel lighter." She wanted to speak, but emotion held her captive. He reached out, brushing her tears away, whispering, "No one can shame what is sacred." And in that instant, she understood that this was not just love, it was destiny. The kind of bond written by the heavens, immune to time or opinion. That evening, as the sun descended into the desert horizon, Fazza stood before a crowd of his people, poets, dignitaries, and dreamers alike. He recited his latest poem, each word echoing with truth. "Love is not a scandal when it is sincere, it is not rebellion when it is pure, and I, a man of words and faith, bow before the woman who made me fearless." The audience fell silent, some in awe, some in disbelief. But Fazza didn't care for reaction, he cared only that his truth had been spoken. She watched him from afar, her heart bursting with pride. For years, she had feared being the reason for his pain, but now she realized she was the reason for his freedom. He had turned his love into art, his feelings into legacy. In his courage, she saw a reflection of her own strength. "My love," she thought, "you've turned my silence into song." And though the world might never fully understand them, they didn't need its approval, they had something purer, each other. Days passed, but the confession did not fade. It spread through every heart that had once been afraid to love. People began to quote his words, to find courage in his defiance. Fazza had unknowingly sparked a movement, one where love could stand proudly, unhidden, unashamed. He had proven that even a prince could bend the rules for the sake of truth, that a man could still choose his heart over the crown. And in that choice, he became immortal, not for his titles, but for his love.